Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Moikamba from Nairobi, Kenya, and I am so delighted to welcome you here for our Global Moments Gallery exhibition with our fellow photojournalists. And you can see we're from Nairobi, and we have so many journalists from Malawi, Paraguay, Kuwait, Kazakhstan, so many of us. So we are a group of 73 journalists from 55 countries spanning 16 time zones, and we were individually selected by the US Embassy in each of our respective home countries. Now, we are participants in a very special initiative called a Global Moment in Time, which is part of the US Department of State's International Visitor Leadership Program, or we like to call it IVLP. That's right. And the IVLP is now in its 82nd year, and our group of photojournalists is just one of the 3 Global Moment in Time projects.
Thank you, Terry. Now, the Global Moment in Time is the first ever IVLP with programming spanning a year. We had a virtual component in the fall of 2021 and still plan to have an in-person program next fall. In between is our bridge program, allowing us to continue to grow and deepen our relationships with one another and with a wider audience. So these Global Moment Gallery exhibitions are part of that opportunity for us to connect with each other and through our work as well. So we welcome you to today's exhibition. But for some housekeeping, let's go to Bridge and Bonnie, our bridge builders. Over to you, Brittany.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emmanuel and Terry. In addition to being our moderator for today's Global Moment Gallery, Emmanuel Yagon is actually a trained communicator and passionate storyteller with a special focus on smartphone storytelling. He is also the co-founder and communications director at Mobile Journalism Africa in Nairobi. Terry is also from Nairobi. You can see this is a wonderful Global Moment in Time meetup. And she also does it all. She is a media professional and a lawyer who is driven to expand digital platforms across Africa. She does media training, photography, and is a dignified storyteller. We are so glad to have them on the team. And incidentally, it is both of their birthdays. One was 2 days ago and one is in a few days. So we would like to wish them both a happy, happy birthday. And my name is Brittany Link. Along with my colleague Bonnie Beard, we have the pleasure of being the bridge builders over the course of this year. And we are so impressed with this group of photojournalists. As life starts to get back to normal, it sometimes feels like the early days of COVID are a distant memory. Today, we will step back to some of the early days of life during the pandemic. We will see our journalists and photojournalists on the front line, often in harm's way, to tell the story and capture the image. As we see some of their images and hear their story, we'll see that clearly. We honor your work and your service. As we start today, I also will mention that though this is a US Department of State sponsored program, the views expressed by the IVLP participants in this exhibition are their own and not necessarily those of the US government. Thank you all for being here. We are so glad to have you. Over to Bonnie.
Thank you, Brittany, and welcome to everybody. We are so excited to see everyone here and to have another exhibition gallery. I would like to do a couple of housekeeping tasks here. And while I'm doing this, actually, if you would just throw into chat where you're signing in from, either your country or your state or your city, so we can get a sense of the scope of our audience would be wonderful. You can also rename yourself with your city and name and country. Please stay muted when not speaking. We would try to minimize the amount of background noise that we have going on. The presentation is being recorded, so be aware of that. We will have the recording available on our website for people to see at a later date. The transcription is also on. Terry and Emmanuel will be handling the Q&A portion. We will be running about 7 minutes for each presentation with 5 minutes for Q&A of that particular photojournalist and presenter. keep in mind that the questions we generally get, we're getting maybe 2 or 3 in that time slot. And then at the end, after all the presenters have spoken, we will have another 10 minutes or so for Q&A. We ask all the Global Moment participants to stay on for a few minutes at the end for some announcements. And I think that's it. Over to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Brittany and Bonnie. And clearly, this is a very important session for us. But yeah, we want to just remind guys who are joining us that, if you want to ask any question, just use the raise hand function. We'll point to you, and please just, unmute your mic and, ask your question. But that is when that time comes. For now, let's start from where we should. Terry, take it away.
All right. So first of all, thank you so much, Brittany and Bonnie, for this. I am really excited to be here again. Anyway, so our first presenter today is Daniyar Mussirov. Daniyar Mussirov is a photojournalist at Kazakhstan's leading independent digital media, Blast, and he has been with Blast since 2013. And in that time, he has created over 100 photo reports for covering political events, environmental issues, and key stories in other regions in Kazakhstan. So he's also a video editor and a sound editor for Blast's podcast. So Danny, welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you. Glad to be here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Let me just briefly introduce myself. So yeah, I'm Daniyar Mussirov, Kazakhstan, Almaty, and I work in local independent media, Vlast KZ. And I wanted to start my presentation with this picture. So an emergency regime was declared in Kazakhstan on 16th of March 2020, and the number of people with coronavirus was increasing, and Kazakhstanis were divided into 2 camps. Someone in panic bought food, masks, medicine, and others didn't believe in COVID at all. So I took this picture on the first day of the pandemic in Kazakhstan, while public transport was still working, and I really wanted to capture this moment. So most Kazakhstanis were not afraid of the disease itself, but of the economic collapse. All enterprises, schools, business, factories, by order of the country's leadership, stopped their work, and millions of people were left without wages. But unlike other countries, they didn't pay any benefits in Kazakhstan. If you don't take into account $89, which the state paid once. And many continue to work as underground hairdressers. Some cafes, restaurants, and nightclubs were secretly receiving guests, and beggars, as you see in these pictures, continue to beg for bread, the cost of which, by the way, increased by a quarter. People began to understand that something is really very serious was happening only when there were no places left for patients in the hospitals of Kazakhstan, and information about hundreds of deaths began to leak into the media, and there were no medicines left in pharmacies, even masks. And by the way, if you pay attention, you see the ambulance and the uniform of the staff in this picture. So many hospital staff complained that Kazakhstan is not prepared for any pandemic. I mean, the hospitals in Kazakhstan, because there were no proper protective suits, lack of modern ambulances, and they simply had to wash their suits, which were supposed to be disposable. And this is in Almaty, one of the richest and largest city of Kazakhstan. Hospitals sent their patients home and began to accept only COVID patients. Elective surgeries were postponed, even hospices began to send their patients home. And in this picture, you can see these brave doctors who traveled for days to visit their cancer patients on their last stages. And they will not be saved, but the doctors managed to relieve their pain and suffering. So I traveled with these amazing doctors, and I was really amazed by their strength, resilience, and the difficult conditions they had to work. Okay, next picture. So after 2 months of quarantine, in May, the Victory Day was celebrated in Kazakhstan. Not all war veterans were allowed to commemorate those who died in the war because all parks were closed, including the park where the eternal flame, the victory symbol, is located. And it was here that Kazakhstanis brought their flowers on 9th of May to pray for the peace. And as you can see here, the old man is watching the fire through the closed fence. So the months of our quarantine passed. Winter 2020 has come, and winter for many Kazakhs is not only New Year holidays, but terrible memories associated with the December events of 1986, when thousands of Kazakhstanis took to the streets of their cities to protest against the political dictatorship by the USSR. And traditionally in December, activists take to the squares and streets of their cities and remember those who died in the December uprising. But each time these rallies end in a clash between civilians and the police. So unsanctioned rallies are prohibited in Kazakhstan. There is no freedom of speech, and the country's leadership doesn't give permission for protests, the agenda of which doesn't suit them. And Kazakhstanis are not satisfied with many things, from corruption to the general dictatorship of the government. And in 2020, people tired of quarantine measures, lack of money, lack of assistance, any assistance from the government. So they took to the streets of the cities. As an example, in this picture, a woman is holding a portrait of a political prisoner, Aron Atabek, in her hands and demands his release. He spent more than 15 years in prison, and in 2029 he was released and soon contracted the coronavirus and unfortunately died. So he was not broken by 15 years in prison, but COVID killed him. I think I will skip this. No, okay. So yeah, I have already lost count of how many rallies there were that year. But I remember very well that people were forbidden to speak, they were beaten, they were taken away like animals in paddy wagons, and journalists, as well as other activists, were kept for hours in cold using kettling. So kettling basically is when the police and military encircle the protesters and keep them in such ring for several hours without the opportunity to go to the toilet, sit down, or drink water. And I want to add that these women in this picture, they do not participate in the beatings of protesters, but when the number of participants exceeds several hundred people, all representatives of the military structures come to the square. This is one of my favorite pictures. It was taken during one of the largest protests before the pandemic. I specifically decided to show you this picture where people protesting against unfair presidential elections. So more than 100 people were detained in Almaty. Among them were media workers, and you know, the miracle didn't happen. Our new president, just like the previous one, with our new president, we still haven't got any voice of freedom. Just like this year when Bloody January happened and hundreds of people were killed on the streets of Kazakhstan, and the same number are now in prison just for one desire. They want to be heard. Yes, so thank you all. And I just quickly wanted to end my presentation with the words of encouragement to our colleagues, photojournalists who work in humane conditions. They risk their lives and health to show millions of people the truth. And right now, hundreds of our colleagues are at war in different parts of our world. And one of these wars is happening in Ukraine now, where I really want to visit again. I believe that we are all will visit this country after the victory of Ukrainian people over evil. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniyar, for the powerful presentation there. Really powerful images from Kazakhstan. I'm wondering, how is the situation right now in as far as COVID-19 is concerned? And also, while you prepare to answer that, if any of the participants has a question, just raise your hand, and we will allow you to unmute and ask your question. How about you, Dan?
Yes, it's easier now. COVID restrictions are getting easy, so people, they don't have to wear masks in some places, but we used to have these QR codes to enter some big shopping malls and concerts, but now it's getting easier. Yeah.
I think I was telling Emmanuel that your pictures are very powerful. So thank you so much for sharing them with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a question from, it's a comment from Megan. Yeah. She's saying these are powerful pictures and powerful stories. Of course, again, thank you for sharing your work. If you have a question, please just use the raise hand function. Okay, so I think for now, Daniyar, we will pick all the questions that come up and ask the questions later. But we want to cross over now to Kuwait, where we have Sami Alramyan, who's a freelance photographer and the founder of Reflections. Sami is a documentary and street photographer from Kuwait, and he has worked on documentary and humanitarian photography projects for many relief and humanitarian organizations, including photographing Syrian refugees in Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon, and Bangladesh as well. The Yemeni refugees in Djibouti, as well as some of the work that he has done. His work has been published in several places, including National Geographic magazine, Arabic edition, and also Sami is passionate about capturing people spontaneously as they are. So Sami, welcome to make your presentation.
Thank you for these nice words, and thanks to everyone who are attending this presentation and gallery. Actually, as a documentary photographer, I usually, when I work, I try to do a project instead of just single photos. So during the COVID-19, the government here in Kuwait allow people to stay at their homes, and all the salaries, the benefits, everything is going normal, but they are staying at home with no work, even though most of the people trying to support their country, to help. So there were many volunteers groups and teams and people going to their work as normal, and people going to, for example, supermarkets, just to give help and support during the pandemic. So I came up with this idea about, okay, it's in everywhere, people talking about the front line, but instead of front line, I call it lifeline heroes. So those people gave us life during the COVID-19 period. So let's start with the presentation. I tried in this presentation to cover, in this presentation and in the project, to cover as many people as I can. Until now, I photographed around 150 Kuwaitis, nationality, non-Kuwaitis, men, women, expats, also young people, old people, just to give this kind of mass for the project. So this is Dr. Omar Al-Gabandi, and he's working in the COVID-19 intensive care. In this project, I tried to, and in these portraits, I tried to give people the space and free to express their personality and their feelings and how they want to pose for the camera. So you will find different kind of pose in this project. So yeah, Dr. Omar is in a very critical situation during the COVID-19 in the intensive care. Also, Dr. Amro Alam in the same hospital, Jabir Hospital, and dealing with the patient who are affected by COVID-19. Also, the Sergeant Fahad Jassim, he is in the National Guard, guarding a quarantine. So people inside cannot go outside, and people outside cannot go inside without a permission. So I also tried to photograph his personality. Usually the special forces, we see them serious and trying to stop people. In this photo, I tried to show his personality during the COVID-19 as they are hospitaling people in the one of the quarantine in Kuwait was a hotel, and people out during the first days of the COVID-19, when they are coming back from outside Kuwait, they are stay in the hotel for 2 weeks and then go outside. So they need this kind of smile, this kind of hospitality and welcoming people. So I try to photograph that as well. Also, those are volunteers. They were teachers, but during the COVID-19, they are volunteering in the scout team, and also written on their badge. You can see it called volunteer. This is a dentist doctor, and during COVID-19, because of they don't want to stay at home because they are dentists and nobody go to the dentist during the COVID-19. So they volunteered in the Kuwait airport, welcoming everybody coming outside Kuwait to make all the tests and stuff like that. Also, as you can see, she has such personality, Dr. Amna Al-Mutawwa. Dr. Muhammad Al-Jasmi, he is a director of a quarantine where there were around that quarantine could take around 5,000 people. And some of the times there were 3,000 patients inside affected with the COVID-19, and he's the director of that whole area. So you can see the personality in his portrait. Also, Abdulaziz Al-Kandari, he is a friend, and he, during the COVID-19, was leading a big volunteer team to give thousands of food every day for the people who were isolated. And during the COVID-19, there were some areas in Kuwait, especially the areas where there were labor, men and women. It was isolated, so those people need food, need medical help, need stuff, many stuff. So Abdulaziz Al-Kandari with his team were giving help and support and food on an everyday. Anwar Rashid also leading a team, volunteer team called Hope, just to give also support and help for the isolated areas during the COVID-19. I will end my presentation with this photo. This is Isa Lari. Isa Lari is a general surgeon in Jabir Hospital. And during that time, doctors need something when they are dealing with the patient in their critical situations. They need to cover their faces. So he came up with this idea to take the snorkeling and print a 3D pipe with filter outside the hospital and stick it to the snorkeling so they can deal with the patient without the fear of getting the virus. And this idea were approved by Ministry of Health, and there were many doctors walking in the intensive care, as you can tell, with a snorkeling mask on their faces. I just want to end with these two photos. This is during my doing the project. This is the wardrobe and the stands, and put it in everywhere I can photograph people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sami. That is a brilliant way of telling stories through these personalities, whom I believe all are frontline workers, don't you think, Terry?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that he's gone the black and white way. You know, she was remarking that this is a brilliant way of telling these stories. How about you, Terry?
And it's so interesting. First of all, your title is very clever. So that was quite interesting. And also, I wanted to ask, after you take the pictures, what tools do you use? I mean, in processing the pictures, is there any app
or software?
or software? Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm using okay, professional camera, and the white background I use is a white fabric, and I use Lightroom for editing the photos. And then I took all the photos to Photoshop so I could add the black frame. So you can see it's standard. All the pictures look the same, but inside the frame is different look.
Okay, Daniyar, you have a question? Just unmute and ask.
Yes, hi, Sami, amazing portraits. I think you already answered. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about these white backgrounds, how you make it. So yes, you answered them. And I love black and white pictures. And so when you took these pictures, were they black and white straight away from the camera, or did you like post-production? How did you make it? I mean, because sometimes when I take, I have these presets on my camera and they straight like black and white, so I don't edit them. But sometimes, yes, I take colorful pictures and then I change them to black and white. So how did you make it? Thank you.
Yeah, usually I take the photos in color, but it's raw, so I could control everything in the photo. And then I took it to Lightroom and make all the process and put all the processing and contrast and stuff like that, and transfer it to black and white. And also, as you can see, I like the effect of the film photos, the negative film photos. So it looks like that somehow. And then I take it to Photoshop to take out the background, to clean the background, even though it's white, but sometimes white doesn't look as white as we want. So I clean it with Photoshop and add the frame, and that's it. It's an easy job.
Thank you so much. I think we have comments as well in the chat box. Megan is saying it's a wonderful project. Someone else there, and from World Learning saying that's a brilliant idea about using snorkeling masks to help doctors keep patients safe while examining them. Daniyar as well is saying great portraits. Of course, he's asked that question.
Thanks.
We had one from. Okay, I think we've got all the comments in. Remember, if you still have a question for Sami and even any other question for Daniyar, you can keep that question for now. But I think I'll allow Terry to lead us to the next presenter. Thank you so much, Sami, for your presentation. Terry.
All right, thank you, Sami. Our next presenter is an award-winning journalist. He's called Jacob Nankhonya he's a photojournalist from Malawi. He's also a journalist, a cameraman, an infographic designer, among so many other things. And currently he's working as an assistant technical editor at Nation Publications in Malawi. And through the years, he's actually won different awards, including Photojournalist of the Year, Best Business and Economics Journalist of the Year, and Best Journalist of the Year based on investigative articles on how local tobacco farmers were being duped out of their farming returns in the name of contract farming. So Jacob, welcome, and we're so glad to have an award-winning journalist.
Exactly, that's a brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am Jacob Nankhonya from Malawi. I work as a technical editor at Nation Publications. The COVID-19, the pandemic, when it came in the country, like many other countries, so many things happened. The first one was instilling fear on everyone, that's including journalists. So that brought about changes in the way we have been doing things. One notable thing was around the world and including Malawi is the preventive measures. So as you can see in this photograph, I took this just recently at the State House when we had the visitors, IFAD head and the Norwegian, the latest Norwegian minister, one of the ministers there, and then they are like bidding farewell using elbow bump. This is one of the preventive measures to avoid shaking hands and spreading the virus if it so happens that one of them had touched the surfaces which have been have the virus. And then take note of the space between them, the social distance. This is as a way of preventing themselves from contracting the virus. The next photo, please. And in this photo, you can see this is our state president in the blue mask, the Lazarus Chakwera. And the other gentleman is in the black face mask is the vice president. I captured this during one of the public events. Instead of shaking hands, which has been synonymous with moments like this in the past, they just put together their hands and maintain the social distance and made that gesture as to show that they welcoming each other, so to speak. Again, the executive are demonstrating the importance of preventive measures, adhering to them. Recently there was a SADC meeting in the country. So one of the there are a number of heads of states and the executives from different senior government officials from different countries within the SADC region. So in the photo, you can see a number of things. One is, this is the His Excellency Felix Tshisekedi from the DRC, being welcomed by the state president, Dr. Lazarus Chakwera. And then in the background, there is the Mozambican president. You can see the distance between these three heads of states, and then the way they are actually greeting each other, still avoiding the handshakes, and also they have their face masks on. They are still maintaining the importance of adherence to the preventive measures. And the COVID-19, as I've demonstrated using those photos, three photos we have seen, has brought about changes in so many people's lives. Here in this photo, there is we can see a lady, an elderly lady. She's mining sand in a river that's in the outskirts of the Lilongwe city. This is not what she used to do in the past. In the past, she was selling vegetables, but she had to take vegetables into the city, sell door to door. But with the coming of COVID, she felt that wasn't safe anymore, because she increased the chances of physical contact with many people, and with the civic education she got from the authorities through the radios, posters, and all other means. She decided to change her line of business. Then she ventured into sand mining. Here, she mines the sand and she stays there. People come and buy the sand, and she feels safer that way because the people she gets in touch with, the number is reduced. And then she actually told me that she could not just stay without any business because she's taking care of her orphaned grandchildren. So she just had to find a way of earning a living. So her life has changed due to the COVID-19. During the second wave, the countries had to put in place measures to reduce infection within, and even that coming from outside the country. So Malawi has a number of people who trek to South Africa looking for employment. Others are business people, but in this case, there are so many people who are working in South Africa, and the government of South Africa decided that these people should be assisted to go back to their respective countries. Malawians happened to be some of them, and upon arrival, before they reintegrate with the Malawi society, they had to be tested for COVID-19. So in the photograph, we are seeing a health official doing one of the procedures, which are he's taking temperature of the Malawian who has just arrived from South Africa. As the governments or as the world was responding to COVID-19, then came the vaccination. My government had so many vials of vaccinations, of COVID-19 vaccinations. Then some of them expired before being administered to the people. And then the government made a decision that those expired in the incinerator at a government hospital to destroy them. This particular government destroyed 19,610.
We keep losing Jacob there. I don't know, but when he gets back, we can get straight into questions, right?
Yeah.
Just interested in knowing how the times have changed in terms of just documenting the pandemic, and probably this is a question that we'd like to get responses from presenters, because having 2 years which changed everybody's life, and like we said when we started this whole conversation, is that we are all connected in one way or the other. Welcome back, Jacob. I was wondering, how has the situation changed for you as a journalist covering the pandemic? How has the situation changed in Malawi? How was it with the lockdowns and everything? And now what would be the photos if you are to photograph anything related to the pandemic? What would the photos look like today?
At the moment, the photos would be different because the numbers have dropped drastically. For instance, yesterday, there were about 9 cases of COVID. And is it just that, according to the Ministry of Health website, which means there are so many things have changed. People are wearing masks sparingly. And recently there were demonstrations and corruption or something like that, demonstrations where I saw so many people on the street crammed together demonstrating without masks, which means that it is based on the information on the government website and based on the things I'm seeing on the ground, there's things have relaxed a lot. Yeah, sure. So the photos will be different. They'll be more relaxed. So if I can answer that question.
All right.
All right, so I also have a question for you, Jacob. I mean, I've seen your pictures, they're very powerful as well. I'll put you on the spot. If you were to choose one picture that's your favorite, which one among the pictures you shared, which one would it be?
And why?
Yeah.
That's a really difficult question. Of course, that would depend on why I think that can be that would be my favorite. But the woman, that woman who I captured, mining sand, her story, I found that to be compelling. But then it's just me who was taking the photograph, because she's so elderly than the way she looked in the photograph. I would take it because maybe she works around a lot, so that affects her physique in one way or the other. So that's one of my favorite photographs amongst the ones I've just shown.
Okay. Yeah, he handled that question pretty well there. Jacob, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation, and we'll keep coming back to you at the end of the whole presentation. But I want us to now zoom out a little bit from the continent.
Thank you very much.
All the way to Paraguay, where we meet Marta Escurra. I hope I am pronouncing your name well, but Marta is a journalist and photojournalist based in Paraguay, and she speaks Spanish and Guarani, a Paraguayan indigenous language. As a photojournalist, she works for international agencies as well as local media. Her work is regularly seen in the ABC Color newspaper, the main multimedia in Paraguay. She also hosts a radio program where she shares Paraguayan music, news, and interviews with local and international listeners. As president of the Forum of Paraguayan Journalists, she leads initiatives around freedom of expression and free press in her country. Marta is also a co-author of some journalistic and photojournalist books. So, we have a multimedia journalist here. Let's get to hear from Marta. You are welcome.
Thank you guys for the presentation. Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And today I will show you a set of pictures, and it is focused in women in Paraguay during the pandemic. And this first picture, I call it Hope, and shows Luján Cabañas, a 40 weeks pregnant woman, and she is received here containment and support during her labor. And the special thing in this picture is the delivery was delayed because the hospital didn't have the properly needle to apply her the anesthesia. For worse, Luján and her family didn't have the money to buy this and other supplies for the delivery. So luckily for her, an anonymous person paid, let's say, $35. And as a result of this donation, here we have Anaí, a pandemic baby girl. And this episode remind me that the authorities, Paraguayan health authorities, they declared that the gynecological attention increased in 200% due to the pandemic lockdown. In this third picture, I call it in sickness and in health, literally picture, and shows groom Raúl Benítez and bride Jenny Bonet wearing protective masks as they kiss each other during the wedding ceremony at the civil registry office. And the special fact of this picture is it was the first wedding authorized during the lockdown. And take note that this bride has 8-month pregnancy at the time of the wedding. This picture I named Fear, and it shows a female nurse assisting to a female patient for a patient for COVID-19 in the intensive care unit of Ingavi Hospital. And according to the local press, pay attention to this number, only 12,000 nurses are available for 7 million, more than 7 million Paraguayan inhabitants in the country. Because of that and other reasons, they were considered as heroines because at the beginning of the pandemic, they worked in a very risky condition. This picture I name it Belief, and shows indigenous women from the Nivakle community performing a ritual under Samu tree, very big tree, and they pray for the end of the pandemic. And the several indigenous family have lost their work, for example, and so they didn't have enough money for food or medicine. The Nivakle women live in San Jose Estero community, 540 kilometers away from the capital in the Paraguayan Chaco. This picture, I call it On Fire. And as you can see, a young woman performed her firewoman act as she protests at the Democracy Square in Asunción. As her, several group of women marched demanding the end of femicides and domestic violence that increased during the lockdown. And here we have a picture that talk us about tradition and survival, and shows Blanca Venegas. She made chipas. This is a kind of, it's a traditional food. It's a kind of Paraguayan bread. And with the sale of this traditional food, she supports her family during the lockdown. And this picture, we have, I name it In Uncertainty, in unexpected, unexpected, sad and farewell picture, and shows our colleague journalist Martin Ariel Cantero, buried in the city of Limpio. And he is one of the more than 18,000 thousand victims of COVID-19. And he has left behind a widow and 4 children, and also a lot of colleagues in a deep sadness. And then we have to pretend to smile, and in uncertainty we smile. And this picture shows a delivery guy, and their work where the deliveries were crucial during the lockdown, because they deliver, for instance, food, medicine, home supplies. And it was a way of helping a lot of women to take care of their families at home. And finally, after the tears and the smile, we have hope again. And this picture shows a woman who cooks in a large boat, and we call it a popular boat, that fed for free at least in average 200 people per day. And during the lockdown, in average also, there were 500 hope boats over the poorest areas of the Asunción, the capital. And finally, I want to thank you so much for letting me show these brave pandemic women fighters.
That is really, nice, and a wide perspective of the different, aspects of what was happening during the pandemic. I think one thing that is similar to what happens here in Kenya is, especially the image about, with the women who are standing around a tree. We also have, a community here in Kenya who have also a certain belief that when they want to pray, they, go under that tree, yeah, and make those prayers. So it's really interesting. And also, the whole story of hope. And I liked also the one on, in sickness and in health, the picture from the wedding. And she has a question for you.
I mean, Marta, first of all, I think I speak for everyone when I say your picture. Okay, I hope I speak for everyone when I say your pictures. They start so many emotions, the highs are very high, the lows are also very low. And I think that's what photography is about, storytelling. But I wanted to ask, is there any particular reason that you focused on women as your main subject of your project?
I'm sorry, I get very emotional. And it was, we all have a mother, a sister, or whoever who works, who fight for their families. And that because I focus my point of view on women. And historically in our country, women were in charge to reconstruct our country. Let's say we had 2 wars, and the women have to raise their children without any help, and they have to work, to go to do the men's work in order to have a healthy country again after the wars. And I made this work in the name of my mother.
So much for sharing your pictures.
Yeah, just take it.
No,
Okay, thank you so much, Marta, for sharing your work. And we have a lot of comments in the chat box, but before we read those out, please, Daniel Santana, unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to Marta for inviting me. I am a big fan of Marta. I am from the Dominican Republic originally, but I am living in Chile. I'm a journalist also. I was part of one of Marta's projects when she participated in Fojo out in Sweden. So my question is, what led you, Marta, to pick the right moment? Because as we have seen, your pictures have a great emotional charge. So my question is, what led you to pick the exact moment that matched the sensitivity and what you are looking to transmit through with the picture? What is going through your mind in that moment? Thank you.
I think every journalist worker, if you write or if you take picture, you are a human being and use your camera as a shield, as a protective shield. But in this special pandemic situation, we cannot hold the objectivity. So you just stand and await for the right moment. It is not a formula. You just go and watch and I don't know, in a few seconds you have the moment and you say, great, I have the picture, I have the, but you must be prepared mentally and you design your moment also. You as through your experience you can predict some moments, and you as a hunter you wait the moment and then you shoot. I don't know if it's clear my answer, but I work in that way.
Interesting perspective there. I think we have one other question in the chat from Julio Cesar. Please ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Marta, I have you, just as a disclaimer, I used to be Marta's boss a long time ago, and I more than anything, I believe that she has taught me a lot about being a journalist and a lot about telling stories through image. However, and I disagree with what you say, Marta, about your camera being a shield, because I think it's actually an extension of you, how beautifully you tell stories. But I wanted to touch on that idea because it stays with me, that you think that the camera is a shield. A shield for what? What are you trying to shield from as a journalist with your camera? And what are you allowing us to see in your pictures through that shield?
It's a shield to not to be involved in the situation, because we have values and ethical values, and sometimes you must be just an observer. But as a human being, sometimes you are tempted to get involved in the situation, and that way my extension shield works on the field.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you very much. Natalia, do you want to ask your question? Because I think you written it out in Spanish. Okay, please just ask your question, Natalia Pedraz. Just unmute. Okay, yeah, please, yeah.
All right, I think I'm just going to read out the question. It's for you, Marta. The question is, do you feel if you're treated differently because you're a woman photojournalist?
Tricky question. I don't think so. As I told you before, we all have a mother, we are daughter, and we have sisters. And in my country, the main number of nurses or doctors are women. So they have to work, and then they have to take care about the children or take care about their parents. So I wanted to explore what if I focus my point of view in them, in women. I think the main issue that make influence in our point of view is what we read and what we experiment as a human being or as a journalist or a photojournalist. That kind of things determine our point of view, not our gender, I think.
All right, thank you very much, Marta. We really enjoyed seeing your pictures and everyone in general. And like we said at the beginning, we have a question for every journalist here. And I think my question is probably in line with my career because sometimes I like to see policy change. Yes. And the question I have for everyone is, do you think pictures can influence policy change in your countries?
The first thing is yes, but it is a complex process to make that change. But yes, journalists in general, and we as a journalist or photojournalist, we think we are superheroes who want to change the world. But the reality is, if we can change our garden, it's okay. So yes, it can be starting thing to change things, but it is not our job to change. Our job is to show people and make them think in something, even if this something is a change.
Thank you for that, Marta. Who wants to go next? Sami, are you ready?
I agree with Marta. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Marta. Our job is actually to show people the conflict or the issue, or even the things we need to appreciate, not just the issues. Somehow, some people, some influence people will see the photo, will see the project, will hear the story, and will do something. This could be a regular employee, this could be a politic, this could be a parliament member. Yeah, so our job is to keep documenting and keep informing and showing the issues and even the good things, and just to keep the good life for everyone. And somehow it will reach someone.
Yes, just quickly add, I want to add.
Yes, Daniyar,
so, Jacob. Yeah, agree. Because the pictures. I mean, we live in this area where we see all these pictures through our Instagram feed, Instagram stories, and of course, I mean, it's a powerful tool, as you can see. Well, you can understand how propaganda works in some countries, and it's really hard to to cope with it. So yeah, I think it's important, and real pictures can change the policy and change their minds. So yeah, this is the reality we are living in.
Can I come in? Yes. In my view, I think that photos can influence policy change. I believe that policy change is a process. It takes those who have the powers to change the policy to start talking about it and reach the point where the policy is drafted and finally in use. I remember there was a time when I took a photograph and I did a story about hunger so many years back, at the moment when my country here had achieved tremendous strides, positive strides, that is, in ending hunger. There was bumper yield all over the country, but then there was a certain corner of the country where there was hunger, and actually it's a whole lot story. I mean, a longer story. I may not explain it all here. But when that story came out in the paper, 7 days after my president had received an award, the state president, an award that had ended hunger. So 2 weeks later, the government had, after its own investigations, had to initiate a process where this place received free food, free maize, because our staple food is maize. So as you can see, my photos or my photo influenced something positive to happen. And in the same way, it can also influence policy change. That would be my response to that.
Okay. Interesting perspectives of just, how we all look at these situations and how our work impacts, creates impact in the real world. I'll allow Dan to ask a question, and then Anne Driscoll from World Learning, and then I'll also ask another question. So Dan, go ahead.
Hey, good evening from Rwanda. I just want to ask our panelists today is how did they feel? How did they deal with the fake news, like manipulated photos? As in Rwanda, during the pandemic, we had some fake news which circulated using the manipulated pictures to describe pandemic as another things. So I just want to ask them how did they deal with it in way of informing their citizen. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dan. Who wants to start? Really? Yes, Marta.
Dealing with the fake news, it was a very challenging experience in all over the world due to the pandemic. So we take measure to, and programs, free programs also available in the internet, in terms of picture, to check the veracity of the picture. And also when it was the international news, we use photography from the news agency certificate in our country, like AP, FAP, Reuters, and that was the practical measure. I'm sorry, measure that kind of measure to ensure that the picture, it was telling the truth, and it is not a part of a fake news strategy.
Who would go next to respond to that question from Dan around fake news and how you dealt with, the issue of manipulated images during the pandemic in your country? Jacob?
Can I? Sure. The media house I work for has reporters on the ground. So the stories or the images which are used are taken by these. There are sometimes other contributors, but then they go through a process before they are recruited onto the list of contributors. This helps in ensuring that the material being used or being sent by these people, the reporters, the other contributors, stringers, is legitimate, it's not fake. Because, for instance, if I am fully paid by this agency, and then I start sending a material which is manipulated, for instance, images, I risk, I'm risking my job. I could be fired for that. That's one important step which I believe my employer uses. But then the technical team also has other means of checking on the material. If it can be, I mean, it's not manipulated, it's not fake. Verifying facts and all other stages. Thank you very much.
Yes, and just wanted to add. Yeah, thank you. During this, from the start of pandemic in Kazakhstan, there were new media called Fact Check. And I think it's a global one because I think the head office in Germany. I'm not sure, but yeah, so we had, this was a new media, and they were actually dealing with all these fake news, fake pictures. They were, so this is fact checking resource that could, you know, they had this big Instagram posts where they reveal the truth. If somebody, for instance, in Kazakhstan, it was popular to send some fake news via WhatsApp. And everybody, like grandmas, grandpas, they will send each other all these fake news, the helicopters spreading the virus and stuff. So these fact check .kz media will go on into the details and, you know, prove that it's wrong, that it's fake, and this is the truth, this is the fake.
We have another question, unless we are locking you out, Sami, from that question from Dan in Rwanda. Otherwise, I'll allow Terry to bring us the next and final question. Let's try and keep the responses a little bit brief. Yeah.
All right, so we have a question from Anne, and she asks that she has seen a lot of commentary this week about a photo of the Ukrainian president's face. It was taken while he was visiting Bucha, not exactly sure, and you know how powerful that image is. So her question is, have you taken a picture that probably was that powerful, like you could tell from just someone's facial expressions? In your experience, what someone's emotional reaction is, and you know someone's emotional reaction to a certain situation. Have you ever taken a picture and that was perceived to be that powerful?
It says that if taking picture of deep emotion is good or not. I didn't get the question.
Perhaps Anne can ask her question. Anne, you want to clarify?
Yeah, thank you. So in this case, it's a photo where it's a rather tight shot of someone's face and you just see the emotion on it very clearly. So you're not seeing what he's looking at, which is he's looking at bodies of civilians who apparently were murdered by soldiers. And the expression on his face is just a grimace. It's full of grief. So it's like his face is a mirror in a way. It's showing something that thank you for pulling that up. It's like a mirror, like you're not seeing what he's looking at, but you can tell from the facial expression what the impact is. And I'm just curious, have you ever taken photos like that where someone's face or maybe the way they're holding their body or a gesture conveys something about the events that they're witnessing, that you're witnessing, that are difficult to portray directly? And as photographers and professionals, how do you go about dealing with a situation like that? Are there opportunities that you look for? Are there like ethics or morals that you think about with the subjects and what you're documenting?
Okay, when you go in a situation like you mentioned, you go to work on the field and you don't have any particular intention. You have an idea that you will find in the scene, but I think taking picture of expression of the people looking for something in specific, presenting the person as a bad person or good person is a question. It is an ethical decision, but I am okay to document the expression, because as you know, a picture is a very important part. We are like witches that we frame the tiny part of the reality forever and ever. And this kind of magic implies that sometimes you have to portray people in a bad way or in a good way. And you use the picture for just with the intention of document the moment, not for other uses.
I think it's also important, the caption, the story behind the picture. I mean, if I would see this picture without saying that, okay, Zelensky is in Bucha and now he's seeing these dead bodies. So, I mean, the caption specifically is important as well when you know the story behind this picture. And I don't know, in my practice, I just go and shoot. Sometimes it's like you see something, you take a picture, and then you go see something another, you take a picture, and when you go back and see on your computer, then you realize, oh, that picture is actually good. And so I don't know, for me, you can't just script something, of course, but I don't know. But in protests, you can see big emotions. And yeah, I took a couple of portrait faces where, civilian is screaming into policemen, and you can see that he's fed up with the government and whatever. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Sami. Then you can.
Yeah, well, I'll add a little. I think we, as a photographer, we should be honest and decent when we are photographing anything, especially in the humanitarian situations. So I think we should tell a story of what we are seeing. And to tell a story, you have to photograph the emotions of the people. And yeah, to have the camera as a shield, it's a needed thing, just to keep observing and seeing the situation and looking for what kind of photo you need to take. And after that, when we go home and see the photos, we can see which is the strong photos, and also we connect with the people we are photographing in the photos, and then we are able to tell their story. But yeah, we have to be honest. We have to tell the fact for the people who are not in the location with us, or in the situation with us, where we photograph where we took the photo. But I believe with a good eye and good observing, people are humans, so they react for everything, and it shows if they are happy or sad or angry or whatever. So we have to be ready for that and look for it, actually.
And finally, Jacob. Kindly unmute.
The question again, saying, have I ever taken photos of people's emotions as per shown in Marta's photograph?
Yes, and just how do you go about doing that?
Oh, okay. I take such photos all the time when I'm capturing people, because that helps in telling the story. But just as my colleagues have said, the emphasis is on how you caption that photograph. You don't sensationalize it. You say it just as it was when we were taking it, not adding things which were not there, because then it.
Interesting. So Jacob, are you still there?
I think
he dropped off.
I think he's frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sami, Daniyar, Marta, and of course, Jacob as well in absentia for the powerful presentations that you have made. That has been exciting, don't you think?
It has very emotional as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I think we'll wrap it up from here before we pass it back to Bonnie and Brittany. But from all of us, from the two of us in Nairobi, thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to say?
No, I mean, I think I'm really happy to be part of this group, and I'm learning so much. For us being mobile journalists, I think we're learning so much. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing their pictures and also, enlightening us.
Exactly. So yeah, until next month, where Terry here will be taking lead in moderation, I think we really want to thank you so much. And without wasting so much time, we want to pass this back to Brittany and Bonnie. So thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Terry. You did a great job. 3 cheers for Kenya. It's great. I did want to just take a moment. I know we're way over time, but I did want to just take a brief moment. We've seen really powerful images. We are going back and looking at memories many of us would just as soon forget, that are very real and draw up many emotions. And I would like everyone to just take a very brief moment and think for a moment, how do you feel right now? And throw it in the chat. Just 1 word, 2 words. How are you feeling right now? Impressed, exhilarated, emotional, connected, excellent, thankful. They are the things that bring us together, that makes IVLP so fabulous. This is what we're about, folks. This is really what we're about. Humbled, inspired, hope. Yeah, they're great words, and it does fit it. It does fit the moment. Thank you so much for our presenters, for all of you that have signed in from all over the world. We really appreciate you being here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As Emmanuel and Terry said, we'll be having another event Thursday of every month. So we hope you'll be able to join for some of those as well. So we welcome our Global Moment in Time participants to stay on for a few announcements. Otherwise, everyone else have a great day. Hope to see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. So glad you were with us.